Hi, I'm Chike Coleman, that's Sanford, and this is Real Reviews Rewind, the show where we rewind the clock and talk about some older films and sometimes some newer stuff. And that's just the case this week. We're going to be talking about some fairly newer things. Avengers Endgame, starring all the Avengers and actors you know that go along with them. I don't even think I need to say their names.
It would take too long.
It would take too long. And then Spider-Man, Far From Home, just released this week. Directed by John Watts, and you know who that stars, Zendaya, being one of the people. You have Jake Gyllenhaal, you have Samuel L. Jackson, you have Colby Smulders, and oh yeah, Tom Holland as Peter Parker / Spider-Man. But we want to first start talking about Avengers Endgame, which was directed by the Russo brothers and stars everybody that I mentioned earlier. The plot for that film is, following the snap, the Avengers that are remaining work to try and find a way to stop Thanos from causing more destruction and inadvertently cause terrible, horrible things to occur. This movie is kind of remarkable. From franchise that's had an 11-year journey on the big screen.
Is that right?
Yeah.
What do you start the clock from?
Started from 2008.
Was that when the first Avengers came out?
That's when Iron Man came out.
Okay. So you're counting from Iron Man 1.
Yeah, I'm counting from Iron Man 1.
Okay, that's fair. That's
the
legit.
11-year journey is encapsulated and capstoned by the fact that you have all these major players, but you've also got this beautiful synergy of all these nice little callbacks for those of us who've watched, I believe it is 26 films in the entire canon so far of the 4 phases.
So you're going with you're limiting that to the canon of the MCU. I learned all this from my son. The Marvel Cinematic Universe canon, which excludes some of the Marvel movies, a la X-Men, a la Daredevil, not Daredevil, Deadpool, they're outside of the MCU.
Yes.
Okay.
Although you could argue after Deadpool 2 that Deadpool is inside the MCU, we could get to that discussion at another time.
That's a good point.
This movie is remarkable because it has so many wonderful callbacks to every other movie you've seen, whether it's a small callback or a large one. And it's actually what I think would be considered the most beautiful cap on Stan Lee's time within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And it's a delightfully funny, deep, action-packed film that has a lot to say about friendship, life choices, and ultimately sacrifice. And those are things that I really think give that movie its weight and its heft and will make it far outlast any franchise that comes after it. You know, Fast and Furious says, oh, we're going to have 10 movies, it's going to be great, it's going to be amazing. But really, to give emotional weight to something as much as these movies have in the cinematic universe, I think that's going to outlast many of the franchises that come after. Sanford, what did you think of Avengers?
Well, first of all, let's start with the fact that we're going to give away plot spoilers.
Oh, absolutely.
Since the movie's been out for 2 months.
Yeah.
So, okay. I liked Endgame a lot. I have some issues with it as a film and as a capstone.
Okay.
But, I mean, I think I agree wholeheartedly with the sort of key point, which is that, you know, it wraps up this very, wide and ranging group of stories into a cohesive whole that actually has a satisfying conclusion.
Yeah.
So you got to give it huge credit for that because there's so many series or films or whatever else that just can't really bring it to an end. Mm-hmm. I do not watch Game of Thrones, but that thing I would throw that out there as an example where they're just not able to finish a huge sprawling story. Mm-hmm. So huge credit goes to them for that. Now, what I like the most, because I actually recently rewatched Avengers, the very first Avengers movie.
Yes.
Which I loved even more when I watched it again after watching some of the movies down the road. Mm-hmm. The thing I love about the Avengers is that you can have a superhero movie that is all about action, and it is boring because there's no character. There's no warmth. But the Avengers, the strongest part of the Avengers to me is the group dynamic.
Yeah, the group dynamic, the personalities.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean, the scenes when just the group of them are sitting around, and I'm more referencing the first Avengers here because they're not so much bickering in the later ones. But the scenes in the first Avengers where they're sitting around a table just arguing are, to me, like the best parts of the movie by far.
Yeah, it's comedy gold.
Yeah, as compared to the actual action scenes, which cost millions of dollars a second, versus just having 6 actors sitting around a table and shooting off lines, half of which might be improvised because it is Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah, that's true.
So, to me, I was really appreciative of that this movie had some sense of that. They were a team, they had to solve problems. It wasn't just knockdown, drag out action.
Right.
So I really appreciated that. The other thing I throw out there about this movie that I really loved, and spoilers here, that they kill Thanos like 30 minutes into the movie.
That's actually not my favorite part.
Oh, I love that.
I mean, it's great. It's really, really great. It's so satisfying.
But no, the reason is because I sat there going, whoa, okay, where's this movie going to go now?
My favorite part is where it goes.
Yeah.
I was just like, wait, what? Oh, no. Oh, no.
Yeah.
And that to shock me like that, it's hard to think of a movie that's hit me so hard other than when I thought Raphael was going to die in the original 1990 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Like, I know.
Sorry,
it's a
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle references go right over my head.
I know. It's bad, but still, like, I just didn't know where they would go with that. And, I mean, there have been theories online about what they were going to do, and they did pretty much that. But it's the way they executed it that makes this film great. It's not a masterpiece. There are problems.
Right.
But it's still really great. If you want to sit a kid in front of the TV for 3 hours to watch a superhero film, this is the one to do it. After you've done some rigorous explaining about the other movies they haven't seen.
Yeah, and I think, like you mentioned, because so to me this movie sort of has 3 main pieces. There's the lead up to the first part. Then, well, actually, let me rephrase that. There's I would say sort of the first third, which continues up through when they start to begin the time travel. Then there's the second third where they were actually doing the travel to the other, going back to these other situations.
Right.
I love that part. I love time travel movies in general, but I just really dug all the references, as you pointed out, that they dropped there for the loyal fans. I love the character interaction. You had some interesting pairings of characters that, some of them have never really spent screen time together.
Specifically the first 2 we see.
Being my memory's a little faulty on that
being Tony and Nebula.
Yeah, right. No, not Tony.
Tony and Nebula. Tony and Nebula are in this.
Back in the beginning of the movie.
Right.
But I'm talking about, that was a good pairing. But I'm also talking about just the pairings for the time travel.
Yeah.
So, you have Rocket and Thor.
Yeah.
And just interesting groups of dynamics. I love that. I love the comedy. I love the interplay during the time travel sequences. I didn't care as much for the Captain America versus Captain America fight. Thought that went on a little long.
I mean, it was funny, but the main fun of that actual segment has to be when he says, "Hail Hydra."
Yeah, I mean, the little throwaway bits like that, and I saw it on the Friday night of the weekend it opened. And oh my God, the whole place went bonkers when he did that.
I mean, because everybody's expecting him to do exactly what he did in Winter Soldier. Okay, this is how it's going to go, and bam, 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 bam. And to discover he could be that subtle.
Right.
That there's that character growth nobody saw coming.
Right. And then the additional scene between, Captain America and Tony Stark when they go back to the 70s and all the stuff that goes on there. Anyway, I just really enjoyed that second half. I guess for me, my main complaint of it is actually the third part.
Ooh.
The big battle.
Oh.
Big battles bore me.
Okay.
They bore me for a couple reasons. One is there's lots of fighting, but there's no sense of
possible loss.
yeah, I mean, and then when there is loss, like when Tony Stark dies,
Yeah.
it's like the entire world is able to shut down so that our group of heroes can crowd around one guy who's human anyway.
Yeah.
And mourn that, whereas it just... And then, okay, so here's my last complaint about the movie,
What you
and
got?
probably my strongest complaint.
What you got?
This gratuitous scene during the last battle where all of a sudden all the women characters wind up together.
I honestly don't mind that, and here's why.
Okay.
Those female characters for the entirety of the MCU got the short shrift of the filmmaking cut room floor.
Always.
Including, Pepper Potts especially, except for that one time in Iron Man 3. And give them some form of agency to take on the big bad their way. Nice choice. I know it's a product of the Me Too era, and part of that must have played into their decision.
Right.
But to let all these personalities go for a big moment when superheroes are basically targeted specifically at guys, to let women know that they can be heroes too, that to me is important. It's not going to go on down in history as one of the best scenes in history, or even one of the best scenes in that film, but it gives women the opportunity to know that they can and should be seen, and that to me is important.
Well, I feel like they could have made that point more subtly by just finding an equal amount of exposure and screen time during the fight, as opposed to, and here are all the women,
I agree with that. It could have been better mixed in.
Especially when you got Captain Marvel, because, come on,
I mean,
she's the most powerful person there is in this fight.
Yeah, and she does very little. Except play running back to somebody who passed her the ball.
Right. So anyway, that's probably my biggest complaint about the movie. I mean, that's all. I just wish they had condensed the last part to a shorter battle and spent more time with the characters in the middle.
I mean, but would it have been as epic if he said Avengers Assemble and they just took out Thanos immediately? Or would it be more epic to see Thor have to succeed to the fact that, guess what? Captain America can wield both of his weapons.
Yeah.
And totally throw down with, Thanos.
That was good. And that also got a huge cheer when Captain America started wielding the hammer.
So, I mean...
So, yeah.
The last thing I'll say is my favorite character in this film is actually the one actor who's also getting the most bullied. And that would be the little girl who plays Tony Stark's daughter.
He's getting bullied?
Online, apparently. I don't know.
What happened? Tell me more.
I mean, the details of it have been sketchy at best, but, apparently they think it was a cop-out for Tony Stark to have a daughter, and they think that, that she didn't really do well in her performance, so they're antagonizing her online.
Oh, God.
Which I think is ridiculous. That little girl, for the little screen time she did have, really sold me as part of Tony Stark and Pepper's family, and really endeared me to what they gained after and spoiler alert here, 5-year gap between killing Thanos and coming up with a plan to bring everybody back. That to me was worth all the weight in the world in terms of gold, because you got to see Tony be the one thing we've never really truly seen him be, which is happy and at peace with life and who he is, even though part of that is, an egomaniac genius.
Right, and without that, his sacrifice would not mean as much because you really appreciate what the character is giving up.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think that's unfair. I mean, I certainly, and not only that, I mean, it reminds me kind of when people were harshing on the kid from the Star Wars 1, the Phantom Menace. I mean, it's hard for a child to really act when the screenplay written for them is sort of childish. So I wouldn't put that at all on that girl. I thought her performance was fine. If anything, complain about the writing.
Yeah.
But
Agreed.
yeah, that's tough. All right, so where do the Avengers go from here?
They go. Well, first, what's your overall grade for the movie? 3, 4, 5 stars? How far are you taking it?
Out of what?
Out of 5.
Are you allowed to give halves?
Yes.
I'll go with a 4. I think it was a solid 4.
I will go one better and say 4.5. My only complaint with the film was it wrapped up almost too nicely. You know, Steve Rogers got his happy ending with the exception of the few deaths that do occur. Like, I was more deeply moved by the tie-ins than I was anything else.
Yeah.
So that would be 4.5 for me. Where do the Avengers go next? To our next film, Spider-Man: Far From Home. So
Nice segue.
the director John Watts and Tom Holland return to work together again in Spider-Man: Far From Home. The part of this is that Peter Parker wants to go on vacation with his class to Italy.
The boy deserves it. So first of all, let's recap what happened to Peter Parker in the few months prior to this movie.
Yeah.
So first there was the Civil War tie-in, where
Right.
he got dragged into Civil War. But actually, I guess before that was the sort of origin.
Yeah. That we don't see because we don't need to. Thank you, Sony.
Thank you for not re-showing the origin story. I completely agree. That's awesome. Then, so he gets brought into Civil War. Then he gets brought into the Avengers Infinity Wars.
Right.
Then he gets snapped.
Right.
He's gone for 5 years.
Right.
Now he comes back. Boom, gets brought back right into, Endgame.
Yeah.
So the poor guy wants a vacation.
Yeah.
He wants to be a high schooler. I love that.
Right. And he very much is looking forward to this, and he's finally realizing his feelings for, what is her name?
MJ.
Melanie Jones or something of that. They gave her a different name that's not Mary Jane, but it's like Mary Ann Jones or something.
MJ. That's all she ever was in the... So, here's a fun fact.
What you got?
My point of reference for Spider-Man
Yeah.
was the daily comic in the newspaper.
Oh, wow.
I read that for years and years and years. And she was MJ in that. So.
All right, well, let's just call her MJ. So, Peter is on vacation with his class when Nick Fury goes, dude, we need you for some superhero help. And he's like, well, I know I'm an Avenger, but I'm not Mr. Stark, and I'll never be Mr. Stark, so why are you asking me? I'm just your neighborhood Spider-Man. And Fury's like, kid, you went to freaking space. Come help us with this stuff. And so he's introduced to Quentin Beck, played by Jake Gyllenhaal, who is helping S.H.I.E.L.D., I guess, battle the elementals that have been terrorizing different continents. There's water, earth, and then fire, and
Air.
And air. And Peter has been, helping out with that, but he's also been given this tremendous responsibility. He's got these glasses. What was the glasses title?
Edith.
Even in death, I'm the hero, is the acronym for those sunglasses. And it gives Peter the tech of Tony Stark's entire armory. So he feels like that's a weighty responsibility. And he does something stupid. He gives the glasses to Quentin Beck. And Quentin Beck not only increases the illusions he creates, because guess what, guys? Quentin Beck was a bad guy the whole time. Oh,
we are doing some serious plot spoilers this week.
Oh, you guys didn't know that? Read the comic. Everything about it says that Quentin Beck has never been a good person. So Quentin Beck uses that armory to not only create more of his illusions, but also to terrorize Peter Parker because Parker's in the way, which puts his class in danger. Do I love this movie? Definitely not as much as Endgame. It's still a fun time, the kid's still learning, but he makes that stupid crucial mistake that I don't think adult Peter Parker would make.
Which to me is part of what this movie gets right, is that Peter Parker is a teenager. It's one of the things that, especially when I was growing up, that I really appreciated about the Spider-Man was that teenagers can relate to Spider-Man because he's a teenager. He's he screws up. He makes bad decisions. He makes bad decisions several times in the movie.
Yes, he does.
So, and I like that they don't force him to be perfect, because that's how teenagers can relate to him. And to me, it's one of the best parts of this movie is that they're honest to that. One of the things that I liked about the first set of Spider-Man movies was that they also got that right. Yeah. That he was an awkward teenager. And one of the things that the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies failed on was making him too adult, too good-looking,
he wasn't
too
relatable
everything.
At all.
No. So I like that Peter Parker screws up. It gives half the problems in the movie he creates.
Yeah, it gives him growth, though. It gives him a chance to grow. So I really thought this movie was good. I don't feel like it was great. I like Zendaya's performance as MJ. The best friend, I hate to say this, Ned needs to go.
Yeah, a little too much Ned in this movie.
I don't like Ned. He's not good at backing up Peter or supporting Peter in any way. He was in it for himself in Spider-Man Homecoming. In Spider-Man Far From Home, he doesn't even care that his best friend is struggling. He's just happy that he's got a girlfriend. And I strain to say this, but she's a nice, intelligent girl, which how he could get someone like that, I don't know. So Ned needs to go. He needs better friends.
So Ned's role is comic relief, right? So one of the things also I'd say about this movie that differentiates it from, say, Endgame. Endgame had comedy in the sense the way the characters interplay, and with Thor and his big Lebowski gut and stuff like that,
which we didn't mention, but
was great.
Also a great thing.
Loved it. But Spider-Man is actually trying to ride that fine line of being a comedic superhero movie. And where I felt the movie kind of went too far was in the comedy just being too broad.
Yeah.
I think Ned's a good example of where they kind of went on the wrong side. I also thought that the teachers, J.B. Smoove and the other guy.
The teachers were useless. Why would you put either of them in any sort of administrative capacity? Because they don't care.
So that's the kind of comedy I can appreciate. What I don't appreciate are their very blatant, like the one guy fumbling with the camera.
Yeah.
Comedic spoilers. He's fumbling with the camera and he catches it. And then he holds it, and he drops it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just like,
it's bad
slapstick. Yeah. So I don't mind the comedy. I don't mind bad, incompetent teachers because that's funny. I do mind slapstick that just doesn't work or doesn't meet the tone of the rest of the movie.
I agree.
So
I mean, that's my number one problem with the film is that the comedic things that were supposed to happen didn't meet the tone of the movie. Yeah. I was more invested in the plot. I kind of was on the fence about whether I cared to see Mary Jane and Peter finally get together. Spoiler alert, they do. But they're going to be immediately torn apart again by what happened in the post-credit scene. And I liked the Peter Mysterio relationship, although it wasn't as much of a bam as the one from Homecoming. Yeah.
Well, I mean, but to me, I like the Peter Mysterio relationship too. And it was totally in keeping with Peter, who needs a father figure.
Yeah.
And it was Uncle Ben, and then he died. It was Tony Stark, and then he died. And it makes total sense that he would glom onto anybody who even acts remotely like a father figure to him.
But in fairness, they did succeed at surprising me somewhere.
Where?
Which is after the reveal that Mysterio was bad, which really, guys, read the comic. The reveal of who his group was the shocker.
That was interesting.
Which is full of disgruntled Stark Industries employees. And you see these people sprinkled in from previous MC movies in which they were involved, where we didn't think about them twice. And I think that was a brilliant move by the screenwriter and very well executed by the director. And, of course, the best part of this movie is Mysterio's illusions. Mysterio's illusions, when he's fighting Spider-Man, are great. Because at that point, he has lost all self-belief. He's just fighting to get back to what he thinks is the top rather than being true to himself. And once he finally realizes how to do that, those fight scenes become amazing.
Well, the fight scenes are cool, but I gotta admit, my brain never really got into this idea of of Mysterio doing these illusions as a viable way to actually be a bad guy.
I mean, in the comics, it's as far-fetched as that sounds. So,
Okay.
yeah, I can understand why you would feel that way.
Yeah. I was kind of like, I'm not really feeling this, but sure, it's visually cool. It's just that it's so over the top. Like, there's no way that realistically any kind of processor could come up with real-time animation to freak somebody out with,
You'd have to put them on acid first.
Yeah, I mean, this requires complete and total suspension of disbelief, way beyond what even a normal, superhero movie requires. Now, I want to say though, my favorite part you have not mentioned yet.
Which was
the opening, the high school news thing.
Oh,
what?
How they pulled that
Whoa.
and made that believable. And
well, just the way that they caught you up on the story. Just God forbid anybody has not seen Avengers.
Yeah.
And is walking into Spider-Man cold and isn't maybe going to understand. So I love how they told the story. I love the fact that they made it really like relatable to how teenagers would deal with it. I mean, teenagers don't care as much about anything except the kid who was 11 is now 16.
Yeah.
I love that,
Yeah.
and they just did such a great job in showing it and also setting a tone of humor.
Right.
Because, the movie starts in a way that says, hey, look, this is a completely different tone than anything else that you've seen. Here's who we are. Here's how we're going to play it. And I thought that they carried that tone throughout very well. So
just from the opening minutes of the song played where you're like, what the?
Yeah.
And then,
and
then you see it and you're like, oh, that's where we are. I want to mention one other thing that I really liked, and it's going to be that first post-credit scene.
Yeah.
Oh, so happy. So happy deep inside. For those who have not seen Spider-Man Far From Home, I'm about to drop a major, major spoiler on you. So, after seemingly defeating Mysterio, because I don't think he's dead, I really don't, it is revealed after a date with MJ that, guess what? The whole argument that they had during the fight scene about, disabling the drones was remixed and turned into Spider-Man attacking the city. So now no one likes Spider-Man. And who's the first person on the don't like Spider-Man train? J. Jonah Jameson. And for all of us who were afraid of who would be in that role, we got really giddy because it turned out to be J.K. Simmons again.
Yeah.
But slightly older.
Who's excellent at it.
Who's excellent at that role and brilliant. So that made the movie about 5 times more fun than I ever really wanted it to be. And for me, I would give the film 3.5.
All right, I'm with you on 3.5.
Out of 5.
Sure.
I can't give it the full 4 because there's so many little problems, things that I just had issue with, most of which we discussed.
Yeah.
Well, and what is your reasoning for 3.5 out of 5?
3.5 feels about right. I mean, it's fun. I had a good time. I had a lot of problems with it, but if you're looking for a fun summer movie, especially a little lighter in tone maybe than Endgame, a little shorter as well, I think you could do a lot worse than Far From Home.
You definitely could, and in the next few weeks, we'll be looking at some other interesting franchises. Until then, I'm Chike Coleman, that's Sanford Hess, and we will see you in a few weeks. Bye, guys.